This episode is one of the first topics I ever thought to talk about when I created the show, and weirdly enough, I kept putting it off. Whenever I tell someone what my podcast is about, I say something along the lines of it being a short history podcast about everyday objects. And this particular topic has been the first thing that has popped into a few of their minds as something I would do an episode on. Well, after more than 100 episodes, I'm finally doing it. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind the Paperclip. But first, a quick message.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Justin. We are the Epic Film Guys, and we'd like just a moment of your time to talk about an extremely important event coming up this May.
Last year, we hosted the Livestream for the Cure, a 12-hour livestream fundraiser where we raised $2,500 for the Cancer Research Institute.
86 cents out of every dollar raised goes to research toward finding a cure.
And this year, we're aiming to smash that goal, and we need your help to do it.
Join us from May 18th through the 20th for 30 hours of amazing live stream content from us and a whole host of amazing podcasters who will be joining us to try to reach $5,000.
For more information, please visit www.livestreamforthecure.com. Together, we can make a difference.
Many of the objects I talk about on the story behind usually evolve in one way or another from its original invention. But not this one. In fact, before paperclips, papers were held together using string or wax. And many clerks' desks had cubby holes to help keep stacks of paper separate. When making straight pins out of iron became easier in the 19th century, they were used to hold papers together. But as you can imagine, they left holes in the pages and people were easily pricked. By the mid-1800s, steel became a more common material to work with, since it was easily malleable and also held its strength. It was also an ideal material to use since it didn't rust, instead of the iron straight pins, which would leave rust marks on the paper. Many believe the paperclip was invented in Norway by John Vayler. In fact, a giant paperclip monument sits in Oslo to commemorate the invention. But the paperclip Vayler invented doesn't resemble the ones we know today. It's difficult to describe in audio, but Vayler's invention looked more like a paperclip with the inner loop removed. So if I were to describe a paperclip now, I would say straight piece, loop, straight piece, loop, straight piece, loop, straight piece. While Vayler's design was more like straight piece, loop, straight piece, loop, straight piece. Did that make sense? I hope so. He created this design in 1899, and before that, Samuel B. Fay designed a clip that was to be used to fasten tickets to articles of clothing. It kind of resembled an upside-down teepee, but again, still not quite the paperclip we know. Going back to Norway for a second, back in World War II, it became illegal for Norwegians to fasten any sort of patch to their fabric, especially anything that showed allegiance to their king. Instead, they would fasten a paperclip to their clothing as a way to show solidarity. The design for the paperclip we have now isn't actually patented, but the machine to make them is. The official name of the paperclip we're most familiar with is the gem paperclip. No one actually knows who invented the first one, although there has been incorrect speculation that it came from the gem manufacturing company in Britain in the 1870s. While the design did come over to the United States in the 1890s, it wasn't until 1899 that a patent was issued to William Middlebrook of Connecticut for the machinery that would take a piece of steel, loop it around twice to form the gem clip. The design was springy enough to hold papers together, and the additional loop meant taking off the clip wouldn't result in tearing the paper as much as Vayler's invention. He sold his patent for the design to the office supply company Cushman & Dennison, which trademarked the name Gem Paperclip. Variations have come and gone, but the original design has lasted more than 100 years and shows no sign of going away anytime soon. The paperclip is pretty ubiquitous by now. Even if we don't see a physical one on a daily basis, we probably see the symbols for one whenever we want to attach something to an email. Aside from holding together papers, a Canadian by the name of Kyle MacDonald found another use for it. He had no job, no house, but he did have a website and a red paperclip. And in the early 2000s, he knew the craze over buying, selling, and trading on eBay might be his ticket to a house. So he put up a website with the intention of trading his paperclip, with the goal of trading up to finally get a house. At first, he started by trading his red paperclip for a pen shaped like a fish, then for a doorknob, then a barbecue. He went through about 14 trades of other objects, like a live appearance with Alice Cooper and a paid spot in a movie, and finally traded for a house in Saskatchewan. But probably the most notable paperclip of all would be Clippy. When Microsoft introduced its Office assistant Clippy, some might say he was like the predecessor to customer service bots and even our smart home devices. He was actually a kind of reincarnation of Microsoft Bob, which helped new PC users navigate through Windows. Microsoft Bob, which we talked about in the Story Behind Comic Sans, was very simple with its graphics and was often made fun of for being very childish and quickly scrapped in 1995. But Microsoft tried to revive the idea of an assistant with Clippy, who began popping up in Microsoft Office in 1997. The creator Kevin Atterbury was actually contracted by Microsoft to design Clippy, which, funnily enough, he did on a Mac. But for those who weren't around back then, if you opened up Microsoft Word and started a new document with the word dear, for example, a little anthropomorphized paperclip would appear in the bottom right-hand corner with a word bubble that would say something to the effect of, "It looks like you are writing a letter. Would you like some assistance?" Sure, people could disable Clippy, but the fact that he was automatically on angered people. In fact, some of the earliest memes I remember were people using Microsoft Paint to superimpose obnoxious phrases into Clippy's word bubble, like having him say, "Sometimes I watch you sleep," since having something of a digital assistant was not as common as it is today. Eventually, Microsoft realized Clippy was not as popular as they had hoped, and by 2002, he was disabled by default. And in 2004, Microsoft began running an anti-marketing campaign to kill him, believe it or not. And finally, in 2007, he was pulled from Microsoft Office. Information for this episode was sourced from Slate, Early Office Museum, The Atlantic, and more links which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. This week on Trivia Tuesday in the Story Behind discussion group, Dan Brennick says he gets most of his trivia from the Today I Learned subreddit, including that Queen Elizabeth is a big fan of the Wii. Of course she is. Jen says she learned about the sieve of Eratosthenes to find prime numbers, which is a Google rabbit hole that is awesome to fall into. Lisa says the lowest number with an A is 1,000, even though Adam countered with 100. Amy says she learned a lot of fun trivia catching up with past TSB episodes, so thank you, Amy. And Lindsay found out that the average cumulus cloud weighs roughly 1.1 million pounds, believe it or not. And if you'd like to talk about trivia you pick up during the week and have it read on the show, join the Story Behind discussion group on Facebook. This episode was brought to you by the Story Behind executive producers who support the show through the Patreon page at patreon.com/thestorybehind. Thanks for listening. And many clerks' desks had why can't I talk? I couldn't type, can't talk. Going back to Norwalk. How about Norway? While the design did come over to the United States in the 1990s, No. A little anthropomorphized... I knew I wouldn't be able to say this word. A little anthropomorphized... That's not right. The sieve of this name. Eratos... I just had it. Join the Story Behind this... This is my name. This is my show's name, and I can't say it.